And today we start in Jerusalem, we're going to Bethlehem and then to Ashdod.
That's the Jaffa Gate. We're into Jaffa now. Every gate represents something that's inside. This is the Jaffa Gate we've just been talking about, and the walls around. Main street of the Christian Quarter. Down to the Holy Sepulchre, or as the Greeks call it, the Anastasis, tomb of the resurrection.
This way, hissing to all these foreign Frankish conquerors from inside the holy site. Why do not That is what Herod wanted from this site. Absolute glistening white limestone that would reflect the sunlight and make the holy temple now.
The stone that the builders rejected. This is what this is, a stone that's been rejected. It's full of pits and full of cracks and faults. So it's a typical stone from a quarry that's been rejected. And it links with the psalm that says, the stone that was rejected has become the cornerstone. This stone is supposed to be the stone that Jesus was lashed to and had the lashes to his body. And if they put the ear on the stone at the top, you're supposed to hear still the agony.
That is how the rest of them fled, and that is how Turkey became a republic. By removing around them, you've got perfect flat pieces of rock left over. You take your iron axe, and in about 2 hours, 3 hours, changing people, I've smashed my way through that 7 feet deep. And I've made a slot 18 inches high, 18 inches wide, and 7 foot deep. That becomes a tomb. That's a classic 1st century Jewish tomb, which is called a kuch tomb, which is a slot tomb. Which you would, why would you even bother having something called a rolling stone or a temporary stone over it? You know why? If you bury someone, right? No. People were known to go into comas. People were known to have heart failure, heart attacks, and other things. You could bury them alive. You don't want to do that. So the following day, you'll go back and you'll have a little stone, you'll roll it aside, and you actually touch the body. Now, doing that, you become unclean by touching a dead body. But if you're the first of kin, brother, sister, father, mother, daughter, son, you're already unclean because you're touched by death for a week. So you can touch that body and you tell them, are you awake? Are you awake? No response, you roll it back. You come back the 2nd day. Same again, are you awake? Are you awake? We do it again the 3rd day. Are you awake? Not. Okay. Then, we take wet clay, we put it around the outside of the stone that we've shaped, and we jam it into the opening and seal forever. This is the tradition. This is the 1st century tradition. We don't do this anymore, so it's so foreign to us. People, this is something that we can preach this, I promise you. Why does Jesus raise Lazarus on the 4th day? Why does he wait? He's in Bethany already, but this is the beginning of the 3rd day, not the 2nd day. Why does he wait till the 4th day to raise him?
I know,
because people would say he wasn't dead.
That's right.
He was in a coma. It wasn't real. But he says it's because I'm going to reveal God's glory to him. This is the reason why. So that's why he waits the 4th day. And then don't say to me, so why was he raised on the 3rd day? Because that's not him doing it. Father, we'll get into that discussion. We're not going to get into that discussion. The concept is interesting. Now, what does the 3rd day, if he's rising on the 3rd day, what does that mean? If he's buried just before the Sabbath, and the rush is to bury before Sabbath, because you don't bury people on Sabbath, you sit with the body, and you bury them on the 7th day. So he's buried literally in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he dies on the cross. Joseph of Arimathea runs off to Pilate, gets permission to take him off the cross and bury him. You can't start digging a tomb when it's Shabbat in an hour. So he's got his own tomb that is prepared. It's like a mausoleum. He says, give my tomb to him, lay him there. And he's buried there, and it's just before dusk, because it's before Shabbat. It's on the 6th day. On the Shabbat, nobody comes back to the tomb, because it's Shabbat. You don't go there on the Shabbat. Okay, Saturday night is already the 3rd day. Count the 1st day, he was crucified and buried on the Friday. He's placed in the tomb on the Saturday. The Saturday night is the beginning of the 3rd day. That's when the women go to the tomb and he's not there. Follow the scripture, Saturday night. Follow the scripture. It's very interesting. But we're talking about life in Jewish Jerusalem in the 1st century. So what's the story of this tomb? And it is a bit of a story, okay? This comes down to Helena. According to the tradition, Helena comes here and she sees fish carved in the quarry face all the way down here. And she knows that this fish means something. She knows the Christian symbol at the time. The cross has not yet become a Christian symbol. The fish is a symbol. And she says, there's got to be something significant here. She sends her servants down. And down here, can you imagine? It's like up to here with silt and mud, where the Roman temple has been draining down 200 years ago. Before it was built by anybody. Down here. Nobody wants to come down here. But she sends her people down here. There's a reason for these fish coming down the water. They want to see what's down there. They know this filth, mud, dirt, detritus, and they nudge around. According to the story, they found the cross. And she says, wow, maybe we found where the cross was here. Pull it out. And they pull it out, and she's got a sick woman in her entourage that comes from Byzantium. It's still called Byzantium, it's not yet Constantinople. And they lay her on the cross, and nothing happens. She says to them, dig again, and they dig again, and they can't find a second cross. And they pull it out, the same thing happens again, nothing happens. And then they dig again, and they say, well, we've hit the bedrock, there's nothing here, we're on the rock now. She says, look more. And over there against this back wall, in that corner, over there, according to the tradition on this spot, they find the third cross. And they pull it out, they clean it up, they put the sick woman on it, and she's healed. Helena says, this is the true cross. That's why she's depicted showing a cross. Now, whether that is fabricated or true, there's a very interesting story that goes on with this cross. And it's something that I remember from assembly in school when I was like 12 years old. I I just had a seminary at school when you go and sing hymns and so on. Do you know any of you heard the hymn, Onward Christian Soldiers? Marching into war with the cross of Jesus. Do you know where that comes from? It comes from the Crusades, because just the way the Romans went into battle with the SPQR, the eagle on the emblem, when the Crusaders came to this church, the true cross of Helena was still in Calvary, in a reliquary underneath the rock under there, where on the right hand door, I didn't show you, but that chapel we walked past. And they would take that and take it into battle every time they went into battle. That's where it comes from. Until the 4th of July, 1186, when they go into battle with Saladin, they are defeated, resoundingly defeated because of stupid tactics, but they lose the battle anyway. Saladin's very clever. They go out in their full regalia, full armour. They leave Sepphoris at about 7 in the morning. By 10 o'clock, the trail still hasn't finished coming out of the city, and they're stuck in the middle of nowhere in the blazing sun of July. Saladin cuts off their access to Tiberias, to where he has all the springs, with ambushes laid around, and they can't quite set off with any water because they think they're going to be there in 3 hours. He basically resoundingly defeats them. All the Crusader knights were actually monks, fighting monks, given permission to kill people with swords as monks by Pope Urban II in the Crusades. We have the Templars, we've got the Hospitallers, we've got the Teutonics, we've got the St. John Knights, we've got all these different orders. They're all being captured, and they're given a quick decision. Convert to Islam, accept Muhammad as your prophet, or die. 95% of them go to their death. 5% of them convert. Saladin then takes, he doesn't kill any of the nobles because he knows they're worth a lot of money. They're all minor young brothers whose elder brothers are really king in Europe. The reason they came here is for land and property and feudal wealth. So what he does is, he does something very interesting. He says, I'm not going to harm any of you, don't worry. You're all worth a lot of money to me. But this cross that you've been going into battle with, for every battle you've ever attacked on, we even attacked our pilgrimages going to the Hajj route from Damascus to Hejaz. That's not happening anymore. I'm getting rid of this cross. Well, first of all, he turns it upside down and sticks it in the sword to show that Islam has triumphed over Christianity. And then he says, we're now going to burn this. And they beg it, don't burn it, don't burn it, don't burn it. In the end, they come to a compromise. And what he agrees to do is to have it destroyed and chopped into pieces. And each one of those barons, when they're ransomed and they go back to Europe, they all go back with a piece of that cross with them. And this is why the 4 countries that the Crusades come from, which is Flanders, Flemish, the Dutch, France, King of France, the Normans who ruled at this time, England, Normandy, Naples, Malta, and all those areas. That's the third one. The fourth one is Germans. So if you go to major cathedrals in Germany and France and Normandy, even in the south of Italy where the Normans rule, you'll find churches where they'll tell you they have a piece of the true cross as a relic. I'm sure some of you've been to churches that have told you that.
We saw one in Venice.
In Venice, there you go. Yeah, Venice was also ruled by the Normans. Even if they reach South America, because the Bourbon kings from the Low Countries become the kings of Spain, and the Spaniards send these relics out to the New World. Why are they not in England? Plenty of Normans from England came to fight the Crusades.
They all converted.
No, because Henry VIII burned down the monasteries, and all those relics went there. But that's the story of the True Cross. It started here, literally. It was discovered here. Let's say it was used here in the year 30-something. But it was discovered here in the year 325. It was captured in triumph to Persepolis in Persia by the Persians who conquered in 614. Emperor Heraclius of the Byzantines in 622 recaptures it, takes it back to Jerusalem in a big triumph, put it back in its place. 8 years later, 16 years later, the city is conquered by Islam. But that same cross is taken to the battlefield on the 4th of July 1187. So the cross lasts, if you wish, for 800 years in this church. And the bits of it that you've got around the world came from this pit that we were standing in. Just a little bit without it.
From Berkeley.
Going into an authentic tomb near the crucifixion. It's where the tomb was, but it's been destroyed over the years, and this is where it's authenticated.
That's the sort of thing that Jesus was later resting. There are 9 of them through that opening. 9 tombs. Behind this iron gate over here are more tombs. Behind this sealed ceiling on the front here is another complex.
This is the back side of the tomb that's supposed to be authentic, but probably the ones that we were shown just are original.
The cross section of it on the other side looks like that. This is the 3-tier rotunda, like it was that you saw, but the tomb didn't have such a big structure over it. The tomb was over there. She cut the rock all the way around it so that people could go in procession around it. And the rock was exposed over here. And this was the huge church next to it called the Martyrion, or the Martyrdom. What happens in 614 with the Persian invasion is that this is destroyed, this church. The rotunda is knocked down, but they rebuild it under the Crusaders. The Crusaders can't afford to build this massive church. They don't have the resources. They leave it as a pile of rubble. And they build their church in the former courtyard, incorporating the rock underneath these stairs. Straight ahead of us over here. Okay? Straight ahead of that. So that what you're looking at is the Crusader front of the church. The 2 arches on the top represent the gates to heaven, and the 2 arches on the bottom, the gates on earth. The right one is closed off with bricks. It was bricked up by Saladin, and he took the city over. So was the back door, which is through the back door out of the
قديمة شوي صار اسأله بعرف حقها 3000 شيكل كل سيارة.
Jaffa, we come back all the way around through the rabbit runs, and we come to the Jaffa Gate, back, and going back to the gate.
Wall that exists until 586. What you saw yesterday, the Great Wall, you saw part of it over here. And that wall exists until 586 BC, when it's destroyed by the Babylonians together with the rest of the city. Jeremiah writes the Book of Lamentations, crying over the destruction of the beautiful city of Jerusalem. The city is then slowly rebuilt on its exact lines by Nehemiah and Ezra. And then we come through to the Greek era. The Greeks build a big structure called the Hatra, right over here, which controls Jerusalem as the central fortress. When the Maccabees finally conquer that Greek fortress in 140, it is the last vestige of Greek rule in the whole of the land of Israel. The Maccabees then reinforce the city. They widen the wall down the valleys that surround it. This is the Ben Hinnom Valley. This is where the Jaffa Gate is today. And they rebuilt the wall, and the wall is built on much more massive format. This is it, going all around the western hill, and then that David Street that we walked just before to come up the markets coming out of the city, that is that line here. That is called the first wall. The Maccabees build a palace for themselves over here in this area. Later on, after their rule, Herod the Great's appointed king of Judea. What does he do? He expands the Temple Mount by another 100 meters in that direction and that direction, 50 meters in this direction, and he builds an enormous platform, 300 by 500 meters. In other words, if you want to build a temple that big, and your hilltop is like that, it doesn't fit unless you give people grappling hooks or helicopters to get in there. It's not going to work. So first of all, you take your hill and you build a retaining wall on 4 sides. You fill it in with rubble, you tile it over the top, and then you dig tunnels through it for people to access along and up. That is what Herod is doing. And the western wall was the western retaining wall over here, which is the tallest one because it has a valley going through the middle. Herod builds an extra quarter, it's called the Tyropean Quarter, and that's this quarter over here. And that is called the second wall. And he also builds a fortress that he dedicates to Antonia, Marcus Antonius, his sponsor, who makes him king of Judea by taking him to Rome to get him crowned. Herod is crowned king of Judea in Rome. Mark Antony falls from favour, and so you don't really want to be not associated too much with a fortress named for a failed Roman viceroy. But that is this wall, the city wall at the time of Christ. The first wall plus the second wall. Note, no gates in the north. Why? Because it's vulnerable. Here you're protected by valleys, here you're protected by the Kidron Valley, here you're not protected by anything. So there's no gates in that wall. Then 44 AD, after a series of failed governors in Jerusalem, Herod's grandson Agrippa is appointed as king. And he spends the next 2 years building an even bigger wall called the Third Wall all around the areas where people have started building themselves palaces and big buildings outside the city wall. Calvary is here. It's outside the city walls until 46 AD when this wall is completed, when it's now inside the wall. So in other words, that was a quarry from 22 BC until roughly 9 BC when Herod stops building the Temple Mount. He finishes it off. His grandson continues a bit, but not using the same quarries. Until 44, a period of 50, 60 years. That's the only time they were burying people here. And those are the tombs that we saw inside the church. Let's move and look at the model itself. This is one of the most important on the right-hand side. Herod the Great was a slightly insane man. He was a brilliant tactician. He was a brilliant ruler, ruthless, but he was also suffered increasingly through his life from paranoia. And as a result of that, he ends up in 6 and 7 BC, killing 3 of his own sons, who he decides are plotting against him. He puts his brother Fetzael, well, they say put him to death, it's recorded as an accident, and he inters him in a tower right outside the walls, outside his own palace. His own palace is all the section here. You see where this group is here? He's standing 50 years later. Okay, close to 50 years later. That is the palace. Perfect for him. He doesn't have to mix with them, but he can lord it over everyone from up here. That somewhere in that complex is where the trial takes place. Why did he investigate that? Why couldn't he be tried in the main body of the city, in the main daylight? Why is it done in a closed auditorium? Because had he done any of that, it would have been riots. Thousands of followers with him. So he's taken from there. If you look straight ahead of us, there's a little gate going through. That's in the third wall. The second wall just behind it. Behind the 3 towers is one of the towers. Miriam has her down as well. And his best friend here, because he's visiting town as well, in 37 and 40 BC. He's also seen as being a threat to the big interment of women. Caesar Augustus, son of Herod the Great. I would rather be Herod's pig than a member of his family. Because he would never slaughter a pig. But like his own family. The man was insane by the time he died. Anyway, look straight ahead of us. You can see a little red marking on the wall. Can you see that down by the inside the first wall, the little red marking? That's the western wall that we were at last night. All of the flat part of the wall is what you can still see, but the bit with the imitation columns going up is missing. That's the 50 feet missing. And the Dome of the Rock today, you would not be able to see it behind that wall. The temple is 60 feet taller than the Dome of the Rock was. Oh, sorry, the Dome of the Rock is 60 feet taller than the temple was. So where is Calvary? Look to the left outside the second wall, you can see an area of rocks. Disused quarry, typical disused quarry. That is where the crucifixion takes place. This is where the trial takes place. It's a short distance. According to the Catholic or Franciscan tradition, he's tried in Antonia Hill, not where Pilate would be seen dead. Stinking, stuffy Roman garrison, full of the smell of tanned hide, smelted iron and sweaty soldiers. It's not where you'd want to be when you've got this beautiful marble palace to take up everything. It doesn't make sense. Besides which, you wouldn't want to have a hill involved. Someone who'd been, you know what Roman flogging was? Continue. A Jewish flogging. It was 40 lashes of the whip less one, 39 lashes. Do you know what a Roman flogging was? It's a whip. It's literally a whip. Do you know what a Roman flogging is? Anyone here know what a Roman flogging was? Ever seen a cat of 9 tails? Imagine a cat of 5 to 7 tails, where at the end of each one are pieces of jagged ceramic or metal. You are flogged with that until the flogger has no strength left to flog you anymore. It eviscerates you. It tears apart all your soft membranes on your body. No one is expected to survive a Roman flogging beyond a maximum of 36 hours. You'd be dead from shock or blood loss. This is the sort of situation that Jesus is in when he's picking up the beam or the cross, if you want the whole cross. It's not really something you can see. People aren't put through that today. Even ISIS aren't flogging like that. They just lock people's heads off. It's almost humane in comparison. So this is the south part of the city. We're now looking up at the Temple Mount. Have you seen here the city of David laid out like Florida Panhandle with beautiful palaces in it? That left-hand wall didn't exist in the 2nd century. There was no reason for the Maccabees to rebuild that wall, or for Nehemiah to rebuild that wall, because it was an internal wall within the city. No reason to rebuild it. It didn't exist. There's no record of it. Josephus doesn't describe it. It's a surmise. The Roman theatre in the middle also didn't exist until the 2nd century AD on the ruins of Jerusalem. But the Temple Mount is very accurate. Those gates down the bottom are called the Hulda gates, which means the rat warren gates, and you use one side for going up and one side for going down. You would carry a token, hundreds of which have been found in the city of David down below the steps. This token has on it Tahor Ladonai, means purified for God. You would go into a mikveh, you would immerse your body in living water, and if you hadn't done that, Jew or Gentile, you're not allowed up onto the Temple Mount. You would get a token for that from the priests or the Levites who would oversee the mikvahot, and you would present it at the entrance to show that you'd immersed yourself before you go up on the Temple Mount. You go up on the Temple Mount barefoot. Nobody wears shoes. If you read the book of Exodus, the Levites and the sons of Aaron never wear shoes when performing any of the rituals. And the big temple, the temple complex that's built up there, can take tens of thousands of people. Jerusalem had a population at the time of Christ of about 60 to 80,000 permanent people living in the city. After him, during the extension of the Third Wall, it gets closer to 80 to maybe 90,000 people. At the Passover and the Sukkot, the tabernacle pilgrimages, at the opposite ends of the year, there were close to 500,000 pilgrims came to the city. Okay, well, look at all the big, very smart palaces with the red roofs. Again, the terracotta is not accurate. It wasn't here unless it was imported from Italy. Some people could do that, not many could, but that's accurate. That was a wealthy part of the city, and these little tiny houses in the lower, older part of the city were where the poor people lived. And that pool down below, not the one with the water sitting in it, which is where they thought the pool of Siloam was, is where actually the Muslims marked and said, we own the pool of Siloam. In actual fact, the real pool of Siloam was discovered less than 20 years ago by Professor Eli Shukron, who we met in the north. We bumped into him doing a tour, and it's right up against the southern wall. It's 60 metres by 60 metres. Let's move on to the next. The sanctuary, as it is called, rather than a temple. You see a forecourt in front of it. There are 4 sections of that forecourt. One of them was for storing wood, for burning on the altar with masses of wood. The other one of them was called the Court of Lepers, one of them was Court of the Robes, and the other one was the Court of Women, Court of the Lepers, Court of the Robes, and the Court of the Wood. Those are the 4 little corners inside the courtyard with the round steps going up. That area was also where the Levites were. That's most Jews. What did the Levites do in the temple? What was their job? Washing the priest's feet, washing the blood off their head after an animal sacrifice. What about most of them? How many times did the priest in his feet wash? What are these Levites doing? Liturgy. Music. 15 types of instruments described as being used in the temple. This was an area where you heard choruses and music and sound. It wasn't a silent place. That's what the Levites were doing. That was their job. Inside the area just around the white marble temple building, only priests who were serving in their rotation. We found an inscription in Caesarea with the 24 priestly rotations on it. Every group of clan of priests from around the country, the different villages, goes for 2 weeks to serve in that section in there. Then they go back home, back to farming again. The temple building itself is only entered, the sanctuary is only entered by the serving priests, and the Holy of Holies at the back, which in the first temple had the Ark of the Covenant in, is only ever entered once a year by the high priest on the Day of Atonement, on Yom Kippur. The eastern gate here is not shown accurately. It didn't have steps going down open into the Kidron Valley. It actually had a wall coming around it, connecting to the wall to the south. It was protected by an outer wall. The story of the Palm Sunday was Palm Sunday could not have been any other time of the year except in October. No other time of the year do you have access to palm fronds. The concept of it being in the spring is absolute nonsense. But the triumphal entry, as it's called, takes place right through that gate. It's the Shushan gate or the Suez gate. It faces the road to Persia. Who allowed the Jews to rebuild Jerusalem in 515 BC? The Persian emperors. So in honor of them, that gate is called the Suez gate. It's also called the Gate of Mercy. And this is the Kidron Valley, which leads down here, all the way down to the Dead Sea. That's the way they made the scapegoat on Yom Kippur. The Antonia Fortress there on the right. And over there, the five porticos, that's the pool of Bethesda, Bethesda, the house of grace. Okay? Let's move on.
Okay, Shrine of the Book is where the Dead Sea Scrolls are kept. And that's what we're going to visit now through this museum. Loads.
They went down to the cave this year, and there was Jesus Christ also probably. So the first church was built by St. meaning that this mosaic is 1,700 years old. Not only the church is decorated with this mosaic, but when Justinian propelled the church, it was also decorated because it was decorated with hundreds of crosses. So when people came to pray, they used to step to walk on the cross. Okay? Now, in order to protect the crosses, he rose up the floor and covered them. So this is the original. Now,
Here we're going into the place.
Yeah, anda pilante, top. Sorry. Baby, take this.
We were queuing.
Yeah, excuse me.
Excuse me.
Alucino. I'm sorry, mom.
We were here as well. Yuri, porfa.
He was there, he was not moving.
Yeah, there was somebody here the whole time.
Let us be go.
Yeah, mama, we are already here, so please.
The whole group to go.
Send me like this.
There we go. Touched it.
Please, our
This is the manger.
Magneto Andola.